So Zandvoort's a pretty cool racetrack. As far as Dutch motorsport goes, the four-wheeled crowd call this place home, and though it's had a tumultuous past and been through many changes, it's come back strong and remains one of racing's most challenging and spectacular tracks. G'day one and all, I'm SouthPawRacer, and I'm back making videos again. Today I'd like to take a dive into the history and the evolution of Circuit Zandvoort. The town of Zandvoort itself has existed in some form since at least the 12th century. The root of its name can be found in its location. Back in medieval times, this area of the now Netherlands was one of the few places you could easily get inland from the sea, as much of the coastline was swampy. Here there were sand dunes, so the area was fordable. You could cross it on foot or horseback. Sandford, Sandervoorde, Zandvoort. In the 18th century, Zandvoort's location saw it transform into a popular seaside resort town, which it remains today. Its beaches and fine weather mean tourism is a major part of its economy. But for one man, sun-soaked sand simply wasn't enough. Henry van Alphen became the mayor of Zandvoort in 1925. He came to see the burgeoning sport of car racing as something his town could really do with. So, in 1939, he helmed the first professionally organised four-wheeled motorsport event in the Netherlands. The Dutch being the Dutch, bikes obviously got there first. The 1939 races were held on a street circuit at the north end of Zandvoort, only a stone's throw away from the current track. It was a flat circuit, 2.3 kilometres in length, defined by 90-degree bends and the use of an intersection in the middle that brought cars scarily close to each other. The Zandvoort street races of 1939 were a roaring success, and Mayor van Alphen quickly made plans for more events, as well as a permanent racetrack to host them. Unfortunately, you can probably see where this is going. A horrendous global conflict started mere months after the event, and the Netherlands was occupied by Germany. Van Alphen was ousted as mayor in 1942, but the dream wasn't over. The story goes that he convinced the German occupiers to construct a road on which they could hold a parade after they inevitably won the war. They obliged and began building it, but what they didn't realize was that the Paradestrasse would eventually form the start-finish straight of the planned racetrack. It's a nice story, but like all creation myths, it's probably exaggerated. There are no official primary sources I could find that verify this specific part of Zandvoort's history, and the truth is a lot more complicated. Remember this plan I showed a couple of minutes ago? Zandvoort vroeger, where I found the image, goes into incredible detail about the processes behind the track's construction, and there's citations everywhere from legitimate sources, so I trust it. There's so much information on the page that it almost deserves its own video. I would strongly suggest that you check it out and make the time to give it a good read. There's a link to it down in the description. But in summary, the land the track is on was originally going to be a forested park with a ring road around the outside, and at the end of 1941, Mayor van Alphen was openly talking about possibly using it for racing. The park plan was approved, pending amendments, in early 1942, and they got partway through building the ring road before the war escalated and Nazi Germany tightened its grip on the Netherlands, stopping the work. But how far did they get? Well, one of the advantages, so to speak, of making a video about something affected by World War II is that there's probably photo documentation, and I found some. This is the area the old Zandvoort circuit went through. This is where the layout ran when the track was first built. And this is a section of an aerial photograph taken by the RAF in September 1944. As you can see, the back half of the track is already there. It very roughly matches up with the route shown on the 1941 plan. And down here, where the start-finish straight is now, there's an obviously unfinished road that just ends. Look very closely and you can see a feature that roughly matches the profile of Turn 1, Tarzan Corner. So, the fabled parade road story probably didn't happen exactly as it's told on some websites, though there are a few grains of truth to it. And let's be honest, as far as origin stories go, it's a pretty good one. There's a hero and a villain, we've got a classic trickster narrative, and though we don't know Henry Van Alphen's exact thought processes at the time, there's a chance that he thought he could dress up the racetrack idea with other plans that sounded more sensible to a puppet wartime regime. In any case, what we do know is that there were plans for a circuit before and during the war, and once the war was over, Van Alphen was reinstated as mayor, and construction of the circuit began again in 1946. It took them a while, battling a persistent lack of workers and materials, but they got it done in the end. The existing roads were linked up and smoothed out in places, and an entirely new stretch of road was built to complete the loop. Thus, shortly after Van Alphen retired, the first layout of Circuit Zandvoort was born, and what a layout it was. The start-finish straight was much longer than it is today, allowing cars to reach incredibly high speeds for the time. The first sector was slow compared to the rest of the track. 2 hairpins defined it: Tarzan, the name of which has an unclear origin, and what would later be called Hugenholz. These hairpins were banked, and the camber allowed drivers to hold the outside line if they needed to. In between them was the Gerlachbocht, named for Dr. Wim Gerlach, who crashed here in 1957 and succumbed to his injuries, the second of many fatal accidents in the track's history. Out of the left-hand hairpin, the pace increased, an incredible fast section over the dunes, culminating in the fearsome kink of Jan de Weker's Inveld. Completely blind and traversing a crest, bravery was rewarded with a good run into Schijvlak, a fast and flowing right with no margin for error, especially on the exit. The very best could keep the throttle pinned through the following left kink into the right of Hondenvlak, and the speed kept increasing into Tunnel Oost. This deadly fast turn ran above a tunnel that provided access to the infield of the circuit. With an embankment on the exit and no runoff to speak of, this was arguably the most dangerous section of the track, and it wouldn't get any safer. It was time to go into the forest. Literally, that's the name of the corner. Boss N was a nearly flat-out right-hand kink that took drivers through woods planted in the 1930s, though most of the trees were gone by the mid-60s because of a bug infestation. Trees or no trees, this section was not to be trifled with. Ridiculously fast and testing car balance, because you had to start slowing down through a left-hand kink that took you up over a crest, straight into the fast final turn, Boss 8. Nailing the exit would provide a speed boost for the run back to the start-finish line. So yeah, this truly was a track of the mid-20th century. Challenge and speed were the only real factors considered in the layout, and safety was given a bit of a second thought compared to how racetracks are designed now. While a dividing wall for the pit lane was installed in 1968, the first modification to the track's layout came at the end of 1972. Such a high-speed layout among the dunes was obviously a big safety concern, and the circuit had already claimed the lives of at least 6 drivers, including Pierre's Courage in 1970. So, the scary Boss N corner was replaced by a chicane and renamed Panorama. It was definitely a good addition for racing, becoming one of the prime overtaking opportunities on the lap. It was challenging too, faster than it looked, with a quick exit that was essential to nail for the now straight run into Boss 8. But of course, the main point of the new corner was to slow the cars down, and that was achieved, lowering average speeds as aerodynamic grip came to the fore in many forms of motorsport. Unfortunately, this safety upgrade did nothing to help Roger Wilhelmsson, who crashed heavily between Hondenvlak and Tunnel Oost at the 1973 Dutch Grand Prix. He died, trapped in a burning car and inhaling smoke, as his friend and fellow driver David Purley tried in vain to put out the flames with the one and only fire extinguisher in that area of the circuit. considering the crashes of Courage and Wilhelmsson both happened between Hondenvlak and Tunnel Oost, that section of the track was clearly not cutting it anymore in terms of safety, if it ever did in the first place. It wouldn't be until 1979 that something was actually done about it, and initially it wasn't done very well. In that year, amid demands from the allegedly disorganized Driver Safety Committee, it was decided a chicane would be built in the Hondenvlak corner. Who was ultimately responsible for the chicane's design is unknown, and whoever it was, they're probably glad that's the case, because what they came up with was this. Okay, so Formula One has a long and rich history of questionably designed chicanes, but this one takes the cake, and then smushes it into the carpet where you're never getting it out. If a chicane is installed on a track, I'd argue it should do two things. First, divert the racing line from the original direction of the track. Second, and most importantly, slow the cars down. What came to be known as the Schechter chicane is just a wavy meander that didn't even change the line through the corner much, and by the time tyres were up to temperature, F1 cars could go nearly flat through it, so it failed on both metrics. The enormity of the mistake was clear for all to see, and for 1980, the chicane was replaced by an actual chicane. The addition of Marlboro Bocht was the final change to Zandvoort's original layout. The Dutch Grand Prix would continue until 1985, with Niki Lauda winning the last F1 race on this version of the track. By this point, the circuit's financial woes had worsened still, and it had come close to closing a few times already. In the second half of the 1980s, plans were formed to move the southern portion of the track away from the urban areas of the town of Zandvoort. There was even a design proposal drawn up. Interestingly, a version of this proposal apparently dates from the late 1970s. They were already thinking about altering the track to this level back then, probably informed by the tragically well-demonstrated danger of the Tunnel Oost section. You can see the first hints of Zandvoort's current layout in its general shape: a hard right turn after Schijfvlak, and a snaking infield section that connects to a shorter start-finish straight. Apparently there might have been plans to move the start-finish and pits here, but that didn't get much traction. The Hugenholtz corner is also cut off in favour of a straight run from Gerlachbocht to a hard left at Hunserug. I get the feeling this wouldn't have been a popular change, though it may have been safer. The fact is, Hugenholtz provides an iconic image of Zandvoort, and it would have been a shame to lose it. This proposal certainly has more turns than the current layout, but that's balanced out by a couple more full throttle sections in the middle of the lap. Perhaps overtaking would be a little easier on this layout as a result. But don't quote me on that. There's been extensive landscaping done in the last 4 decades, so Google's terrain data doesn't give an entirely accurate picture, but I think we can still get a sense of what the elevation changes may have been like. I would have been interested to see what this proposal raced like in the real world. I don't know if I'd take it over the current track, but it certainly gets the mind turning. Whatever our opinions, we'd never get to know for sure. The plans were shelved when the track finally went bankrupt in 1987. The old section of track we first saw in the World War II photograph was abandoned and sold off to resort company Vendorado, which created a bungalow park on the site that remains there today. It looked like Zandvoort was down and out for the count, but fortunately a new circuit operator was formed later in 1987, and plans were quickly put together to reopen the circuit in a truncated form in 1989. After Hunserud, the track made a hard right turn down the hill, which led straight into a twisting right-left sequence that would later be called the Hans Ernst chicane. Then a short straight to a quick right named for the nearby resort, into a new boss-out corner that would eventually be named after Dutch IndyCar driver Arie Luijendijk. Through nearly a decade of legal negotiations to re-extend the track, this was the only form Zandvoort took, but it was enough to attract a high-profile Formula 3 event, the Marlboro Masters. Through this and a stable schedule of other events, the track was making money again, and finally the all-clear was given to bring a full layout and upgraded pit building into use. In 1999, the track reopened with Hundsrug through Schijfvlak brought back, and a new section built to link up with what was now the club circuit. Zandvoort was really back in business. The new section wasn't a patch on how the track used to drive, but you could hardly call it easy. The Master's Corner is a difficult right-hander, with no moment to rest before a curved braking zone into the sharp turn 9, which also has a curved exit. Then you need to get on the brakes again for a 180-degree left leading onto the back straight. Drivers definitely need a neutral car for this section. Any understeer ruins practically a third of your lap. And I think the same counts for Hans Ernstbocht in the final 2 turns as well. It's all about having a neutral car and looking after the front tyres, which could be difficult to do through the original section of the track that's still there. Once the extension opened, there was occasionally speculation that Formula One might return to Zandvoort, but most didn't think it would ever happen. I always thought it wouldn't be on the cards, as the track was rather compact for F1, and any changes made to accommodate the Formula One cars of the current day risked completely destroying the character of the track. I was glad to be wrong. Max Verstappen's success and popularity saw the Dutch Grand Prix return to Zandvoort, and the circuit underwent some surprisingly tasteful upgrades. Gerlachbocht was widened, and Hugenholz was reprofiled. Moved further away from the start-finish straight to make more space for paddock access, the corner was given more extreme banking, which has made it a spectacular spot to watch cars go through. On the other side of the circuit, the Hans Ernstbocht was also widened, and the final turn was heavily banked as well, definitely befitting Arie Luijendijk's name. Thus, Zandvoort was made ready for the current age of F1 without completely losing itself. A pretty rare case considering what's happened to some other tracks that have had to undergo big upgrades to bring Formula One back. And that's where we are today. It's nice that the track has come full circle and is playing host to motor racing at the highest level again after a few decades building itself back up. Though nothing is certain and nothing lasts forever, I hope that continues for a while. Zandvoort's story is not finished, but these are the chapters that have been written, for now. I hope you enjoyed this journey. I know it's been a long time since I've made a proper video, but hopefully this was worth the wait. It wouldn't have been possible without patrons past and present. A huge thanks to all of you, including my super serious supporters, Adam Miller, Addison Gonzalez, Charlie Lord, Jay Kennedy, Jess Moore, Katrina Marie Payton, The Original Sticks, Tom Hins, and Cisco Scaramuzza. If you're interested in supporting me and my content, you can do so for as little as $1 Australian a month on my Patreon, linked in the description. I also have a Discord server now as well. I hope you join. That's linked in the description too. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the first corner.